All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening. Welcome back to our Energy Institute members and all of those who attended our previous events and workshops. And of course, a very, very warm welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. It's fantastic to have you all with us. As a brief introduction, my name is Piotr. I'm a board member of the Energy Institute Young Professionals Network in the Middle East. And I'm joined today by my fellow member of the YPN committee, Shahda, as well as the leader of today's workshop, Ms. Nicole Barstow. It's a huge pleasure to have with us this evening. So in today's workshop, we are going to be talking about the topic of getting stuff done with deep work. But before we jump into it, I just wanted to say a few words about who we are as the Energy Institute and what do we do? What can you get as a benefit of joining us and becoming a member? So the Energy Institute is an international professional membership body working in the global energy industry, delivering good practice and professionalism across the depth and breadth of the energy sector, mainly through knowledge and skills development. However, it is not exclusive to professionals working in the energy sector. We believe that there is a lot of value that it can add, even if you're just interested in energy or working in all sorts of topics around the industry. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So as a member of the Energy Institute, you can get access to a lot of great material to accelerate your career, such as knowledge base, skills development, and good practice. I'd say if you are interested in joining as a member, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us after the webinar. But even if becoming an official member of the Energy Institute is not necessarily of interest to you, these events as the Young Professionals Network, as well as they call it an Adult Energy Institute, a lot of them are accessible for free, and there's a lot of free material. So it's still worth staying in touch and following us. So the next slide talks about our leadership as the local representatives of Energy Institute in the Middle East, who are Trevor and Dr. Wadah, all very senior distinguished professionals with many years of experience in the energy industry. I see we're also joined today by Steve Major, who's another senior member of the board with the Energy Institute in the Middle East. I mean, they're really fantastic people to work with, and this is, just an example of another benefit of becoming a member of the Energy Institute. In terms of the Middle East Young Professionals Network, we were established within the Energy Institute at the end of last year, and we are part of a wider network of branches, which is spanning 4 continents. We act as a hub for tomorrow's energy leaders, and we aim to build a platform where young professionals like yourselves can grow and develop your networks. In terms of the Young Professionals Network Committee, besides myself, I wanted to, on the next slide, I wanted to introduce Shahda and Andy. All of us work in the energy sector in the Middle East. We are very, passionate about the industry and about the topics around the industry, and we also really enjoy creating, building this network with you and building this platform for young professionals like yourselves to connect. And with that, I will pass on to Shahda to tell you a little bit more about us and our activities.
Thanks, Piotr. Thank you for that. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I'll just be sharing a bit with you about who we are at the YPN and what we care about. And that is mainly the development of our members, really working towards growing the impact and the scale of the YPN here in the Middle East, whether that's through collaborating with industry professionals, with corporates and organizations, research institutes, universities, and so on, just in order to bring you the most value when it comes to your experience and your professional development. And we've thought of different ways of doing that, such as having more speaker events like today's event and others that we've had in the past. We're also working on networking sessions. Of course, now with the virtual situation, it's a bit difficult to have those, but we will be bringing more of those back once the situation changes. When it comes to your professional development, we're also here to support you, whether it's through the chartered status or even with access to our online library of resources and technical guidelines and best practices and so on that you can find on our app, on our website, and have access to once you've joined as a member. Site visits are also another area that a lot of our members were keen on in the past, and we will be definitely bringing more of those back, maybe key visits to key projects and interesting projects here in the region as well. Mentorship is another thing that that we've been working with the wider Energy Institute branch to come up with, and I believe in the next couple of months, by the end of this year or so, you will have a mentorship program that's being rolled out, and you will have access to mentors and more support on that end as well. Let me share with you just a bit of a brief about the past events that we've had. We started with our launch event in December of 29, as Piotr mentioned, and we really discussed and sat down with you to discuss how you as young professionals can shape the energy industry in the Middle East. We followed that event up with a workshop and a bunch of webinars ever since everything went virtual. We discussed different topics such as the future of engineers, skills and competency development, and skills of the future. We also touched upon the impact of COVID on the climate change agenda on a global level, and that was with different YPN branches on a global scale. And this is actually part of the Energy Institute's Generation 2050 initiative. And just to give you a bit more information about that initiative and how you can get involved, it's basically a platform for young professionals all around the world to get engaged and to have a louder voice when it comes to key discussions and debates around climate change, energy access, and energy security. And basically, you can go ahead and visit the link that is on the slide, but I'll also drop it in the chat box. You can participate by taking the survey that we've launched and providing your input and insights on these key areas. But let me tell you before that a bit more about what we've been planning over the past couple of weeks and what we plan to bring more of in the future. And that's our series of virtual workshops that are taking place every other week. So it will be twice a month. We started with one about data science, moved on to emotional intelligence, and the third one today is about getting stuff done with deep work. We also have another one for you to mark your calendars on 5th of October, and that one will be more about getting tips about recruitment and how you can get noticed in the market. So mark your calendars and you can register. You'll be getting an email invite from us soon as well for you to get involved. But before that, let me introduce today's speaker, Nicole Barstow. She's an innovation culture designer at EY MENA. She's worked with startups and large corporations in the past in areas such as innovation, leadership development, and high performance. And I think we're all excited to hear what she has to say about getting things done with deep work. Nicole, I'll hand over to you now, and thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So I'm just going to swap over the controls. So just give me 1 second. Okay, so you should see my screen here just at the moment, and basically Yes, as Shada mentioned, I'm Nicole Barstow, and my role is essentially around building an innovation culture by helping people unlock their creativity and helping them to use creative problem-solving techniques and adopt a more, I guess, growth mindset and help them to be more experimental and open to new things. So today's session, I guess, provides lots of different ideas, some that you may have heard, some that you may not have heard, and it's all about having this growth mindset and seeing what of these ideas might be applicable to you and what can you adopt into your sort of work at home or in the office. So what we're going to be covering today is this whole concept of deep work. And first we're going to focus on why it's hard to actually do deep work. We're going to talk about what the difference is between shallow and deep work. And then we're going to spend some time about how to actually practice deep work. So the whole thing is that, as you know, work is changing. So before coming to work, we learn what to do, we learn how to think, we learn how to get a job, but no one actually ever teaches us how to work. Nobody says, look, don't have your laptop on your lap. Nobody says, don't lie on the bed with your laptop or have Netflix on or have your children and your dog in the background while you work. We don't really get told these things. And we've moved from, say, private cubicles and the corner office to more open plan workspaces, which can be quite noisy actually and quite distracting. And now we've also been moved to irregular schedules, lots of meetings and disruptions. There's notifications popping up that cause us to actually stop and start continuously. And now in our pandemic work world, there are so many more challenges to how effectively we work. Interestingly enough, we should have more time. We've saved time on our daily commute and on the need to get ready in the mornings. I know it's certainly easier for me to put on some tracksuit pants and some slippers instead of some high heels and a skirt. And working from home can be difficult. It's hard to set boundaries with some of our co-workers. It can be easy to blame them, and especially hard to set boundaries with ourselves in regard to how much time we're going to actually spend doing work. But the thing is, it's going to get more demanding. So why will it get more demanding? Well, essentially, Cal Newport is a renowned author and computer science professor at Georgetown University. And in his book, I'll give you the details at the end. It's from 2016, it's a best-selling book, Deep Work: Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World, it's called. He believes that this will be what differentiates the top performers from average performers in the future. As Newport puts it, the ability to perform deep work is becoming increasingly rare at exactly the same time it is becoming increasingly valuable in our economy. So as a consequence, the few who cultivate this skill and then make it the core of their working life will thrive. So why is this deep work so rare? Well, let's have a look. What I'd like you to do is in the chat, I'd like you to type in, have a guess, what is the average focus time in the office? So just type in your guesstimate in the chat. Wait to give people a bit of time to type in. So people have got 20 minutes, 7 seconds, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, a few good kind of guesses there. So for the last decade, you can keep entering your guess in. For the last decade, Dr. Gloria Mark and her colleagues have studied how information workers, that is, people who work in offices and at computers all day or use digital media in the workplace, and using techniques such as shadowing, that is shadowing people at their desks, biosensors to measure stress, cameras to record face-to-face interactions, experience sampling to capture mood and focus, and logging computer and phone activity, they captured a relatively comprehensive picture of how people use digital technology at work. And what they discovered, that is, on average, information workers have a very short attention span when working on the computer, with just a median sort of duration of focus of about 40 seconds before switching tasks. So the typical scenario that they saw is that one might be working on a report and then check their email, then turn back to the report, then onto YouTube, then onto several other sites before returning back to the work of the actual report. Another quick question in the chat. How many times does the average mobile phone user unlock their phone? So this is what I want in the chat. How many times does the average mobile phone user actually unlock their phone? So have a look. 150 times, yep, 60, 50, 100. Yep, sort of all kind of on the right track, very much so. Maybe it's because you're in it as well. So about 80 screen unlocks per day, while a study of Android users actually found that they unlock their phone 110 times per day, according to Business Insider. So this means that on average, iPhone users check their phone 6 to 7 times per hour, or once every 10 minutes. Now you can actually check how many times you unlock your phone by going to settings, screen time, see all activity, and pickups is a new feature that they've got there. So according to recent research from Dscout, people tap, swipe, and click on average about 2,617 times per day, which is about 1 million touches per year. So this data includes all types of interactions, from reading, sending text, scrolling. How much time we spend is actually indicative of the importance these devices now play in our lives. So another little task for you. I'd like you in the chat to think about how long would it take to return to the previous level of performance after 5 minutes on Instagram. So say, for example, you're working on a task, get distracted, you get a notification that pops up, you look at your Instagram, and then you return back. How long does it take you to get back to that same level of performance we're thinking about? So 5 minutes, 10 to 15, 20, 20. Okay, good. Everybody's sort of on the right track. I don't know if you're surprised by this or not, but yes, on average, it takes about 23 minutes to get back on task. So they found that shifting attention rapidly throughout the workday is increased to greater stress and lower productivity, because when attention switches from the task at hand, people have to reorientate back to the interrupted task, which usually involves a cost. And in terms of time to restore the same context that you had before, getting rid of redundant work such as rereading text, that it takes a long time for people to actually be able to get back to that same level of uninterrupted work. So you can see that many of us are in this cycle of what we call shallow work. And so what is the problem with this? Well, we've kind of convinced ourselves that the more emails I send, the busier people think that I am. And it seems to be how our work culture, our work, our devices are all set up, that we're constant responders, we're continuously looping in and out of productive work. And in an age of sort of these network tools and, oops, sorry. There we go, a bit too eager on the mouse. And in an age where we're sort of, there are more knowledge workers and digital workers, we're increasingly replacing deep work with this shallow alternative. The constant sending of receiving emails is like we're these human, I guess, network routers with frequent breaks for hits of distraction. So this is not deep problem solving. This is just getting stuff off our plate. And we're busy, but are we busy on the right things? So shallow work is easier to do. We can do it with noise, we can do it just with distractions, and it makes us look quite busy. These are the things that are non-demanding, more logistical style tasks, and as I mentioned, we can do them while we're distracted. Whereas deep work, and this is coined by Newport in his book, it's professional activities that we perform in a state of distraction-free concentration that actually allows us to push our abilities so that we can learn more, we can grow, we can expand. And as a result, it's becoming harder and harder for us to focus on this deep work. What are some examples of deep and shallow work? Well, you can see here that if you reflect on your day, that much of your time might be taken up with shallow work rather than deep work. And I've got a question here in the chat about, what's your honest estimate of daily time spent on shallow versus deep work? And examples of shallow work include, going through your emails in your inbox, doing your team chat or your instant messaging, making phone calls, following up. When we go to status update meetings and we just go around the team hearing what's the update, there are often examples of shallow work. Whereas deep work is more about things that require thinking, things that require greater creativity, like drafting a new proposal or preparing for a presentation or a workshop, researching information, writing an article, learning something new. So these are some examples here of what is the difference between shallow and deep work. So how do we actually deep work? What are the tips? What are the strategies? Well, to do deep work requires being in a state of flow. So in positive psychology, a flow state is also colloquially known as being in the zone. So you might have heard it, yep, I'm in the zone. It's that mental state in which we perform some activity and we're fully immersed in it, in a feeling of focus. We've got full enjoyment in the process. And so the flow is characterized by being absorbed in it. And so as a result, we lose track of time. And this enables us to increase our performance, creativity, and deeper learning and enjoyment of our work. So the guy who sort of came up with this or spent a lot of time researching it, and I'm going to have a crack at his name, it's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He and another group began researching flow after he became fascinated by artists who essentially would get lost in their work and they disregard their need for food and water and even sleep. And so the theory of flow came about when he tried to understand what these artists were experiencing. And so as a result, in the 80s and 90s, this research came into schools and the business world as well. So whilst deep work is an activity that's suited very much to generating a flow state, it's important that we seek out opportunities for flow. So we can't create flow, but we can create the conditions for flow. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through 3 conditions that help to enable flow. And these have been adopted from a company called Cave Day. So Cave Day look at improving our relationship with work. They run deep work sprints as well and provide resources on working deep. So this is their kind of specialist area. And so the first thing is that you need to really define it. So you need to be really clear about how you will deep work and where you will deep work. So to have a defined space, and so your location can be as simple as your normal workspace, but perhaps it's with the door shut, and perhaps it's with the desk cleaned off, or perhaps it's with a do not disturb sign as well. So it may also be different from where you do your regular work. It could be outside if indoors space is at a premium. But it's important that you clearly identify where it is that you're going to be doing your deep work, and choose a space as much as possible. I know it's complicated with working from home at times, that is distraction free and is conducive to some periods of focus. And in the absence of such a location, think about getting some noise cancelling headphones that will shut the world out while you work and that tells your brain that this is actually time to focus. So The other thing is try and get a comfortable chair and tabletop. I know it has been hard with space restrictions, but if you can get a chair, a good chair and a simple tabletop, it does make a big difference. Your room needs or space needs to be clean and energizing. So perhaps it's near a window, or perhaps you've got some plants nearby, or perhaps you've got some photos that help you keep happy and relaxed. The other thing that's important is that you actually define your work. So there are two approaches that work well to combine deep work and shallow work. And they are, the first one is what's called rhythmic scheduling. So this is also known in the book as the Jerry Seinfeld approach. So Jerry Seinfeld is a comedian, and one day somebody asked him, how did he get to be so good at writing jokes? Why is he such a great comedian? And what he said was he actually writes a joke every single day. And when he writes a joke every day, he marks on a calendar a big red cross to say that he's written a joke that day. And what he was trying to do was not trying to break the chain. So he didn't want to not have a red cross on his calendar. So he was trying to keep that chain alive. So you can adopt that same approach with your deep work. So every day you want to be spending some time, setting aside some time to actually do deep work, but actually setting aside time for deep work, but also time for shallow work. The other one is what's called the journalistic philosophy, which is where you practice deep work but sporadically. So when your schedule allows for it. So say, for example, you've got a meeting that's cancelled or you unexpectedly finish something early, you spend this time on deep work. So before you start a deep work session, you want to really work out how much time you can devote to it as well. You can start small with, say, as little as 15 minutes and work your way up to longer sessions. So your ability to deep work will improve as you flex that muscle in your brain and practice more and more. The other tips are to think about prioritizing important over urgent work. And we tend to feel better if we can make progress on the important stuff as well. The other thing is start with the hard stuff first while you still have your best focus, because often we fall into the trap of building momentum with easy tasks, and then suddenly it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you may or may not have the mental capacity to keep going with your hard work. The other thing is set a goal. Be clear on what you want to do in the deep work session and what finished will actually look like before you embark. The other thing is about timing it as well. So to make the most out of your deep work sessions, have a ritual. So these rituals create habits. Send a signal to your brain that you're going into a deep work state as well, and helps you to stay there longer. So it could be something as simple as you're going to make sure you've got your glass of water or your coffee. You're going to make sure that you've got something to eat beside you. It might be certain music that you play or white noise that you have in the background. It's just your little ritual. It could be that you go on a walk beforehand to start your day. So think about what will be the rituals that you start. Another thing you could do is start your day by asking a couple of questions. So what could I do today that will bring me a sense of meaning and purpose? So that is, what is it that I will be doing that incorporates things in my day that will bring me fulfillment and well-being? It could be things like reading a book or to your child, or going on a walk with your dog. And the second question is, what are the 2 most important things I can do today that will have the greatest impact? And this is important because it forces you to drill down on things that actually matter and that will not take your attention away from things that are only important on the surface. The other thing that you can do is actually block off time. So spend some time planning your day around how you're going to actually work. So here you can actually schedule for deep work, you can schedule for shallow work, but also schedule for breaks and social time as well, to give you that distraction and that break. So often people use like what's called like a digital detox. So they say, right, I'm not going to use any technology or any devices. But what we say is actually schedule some time to look at your devices. So right, between this time, I'm actually going to scroll through social media. I'm going to get that, whatever it is that I get out of using social media, I'm going to get that fix. And then once I've got it, I'm able now to focus and be less distracted. So think about doing things like that, making sure that you've planned your day really well. The other thing is to think about when is your peak performance time. So everyone has a specific time of the day when we kind of work to our best. This is when we're the least distracted, we're more likely to have breakthrough moments, and it's also when monotasking will actually be the easiest for us. So for some it occurs in the morning and for others it's late at night. It's important to work out what is your chronotype. So we're all controlled by these body clocks, which regulate our circadian rhythms, which is essentially our sleep-wake cycle. So they're inside almost every cell in the body and control when we feel awake and when we feel tired during that 24-hour period. So our body clocks actually affect how well a person performs on both mental and physical tasks. So the chronotype is another factor that determines how biological clocks affect our daily behaviors. So for example, early chronotypes, morning larks, they're called, rise early and are most active in the morning, but feel tired late in the afternoon or early evening. And late chronotypes, night owls, are often tired during the morning, but feel really awake in the evenings. So these individual differences may be seen in lots of other physiological and behavioral and genetic rhythms that happen over the 24-hour period. So for example, chronotype determines when we actually release melatonin, which is the hormone that works our sleep-wake cycle. So for morning larks, melatonin can rise around 6 p.m., making them feel tired by 6 p.m. And 10 p.m. And for night owls, melatonin can increase at 10 p.m., which means, or even later, which means they're not tired until 2 or 3 a.m. sometimes. So genetics can also determine your body clock type. It's also influenced by your schedule and your lifestyle. It changes over your lifetime. So you need to think about where you are, and you might want to, in the chat, think about what are you? Are you a lark or an owl? So I'll give you a moment to think about what chronotype might be yours. So regardless of your chronotype, when your mood is low, so that is if you're a morning lark, your mood might be lower towards the evening or afternoon, that's the best time to do more admin type work or routine things such as answering emails and expense reports and things like that. So that's chronotypes. The other thing is when it comes to actually doing deep work, we actually need to focus on it. So how do we achieve focus? Well, in 2009, Sophie Leroy, a university professor at the University of Minnesota, introduced an effect that she called attention residue. And she found that people going from one meeting to the next, starting work on one project and soon after having to transition to another, whilst it's just a part of life in organizations, her research identified that when you switch from task A to task B, your attention doesn't immediately follow. So a residue of your attention remains stuck thinking about the original task. So her research showed that people experiencing attention residue after switching tasks are likely to demonstrate poor performance on that next task. So the more intense the residue, the worse the performance. And when you multitask, you are not actually doing multiple things at once. Instead, what your brain is doing is it's rapidly shifting attention sequentially between each of the activities you are attempting. So this is known as task switching. And it's the death of productivity, essentially. Although each of these things occurs within a fraction of a second, research shows that these episodes can decrease productivity by about 40%. And according to another bit of research done by Meyer, Evans, and Rubenstein, the human brain processes have two distinct stages. So they call one stage goal shifting. So that is where I think I want to do this now instead of that. And the other stage, which is rule activation, I'm turning off the rules for that and turning on the rules for this. Both of these stages help people to, without our awareness, switch between tasks. And whilst it's really helpful, problems arise only when switching cause conflict with environmental demands for productivity and safety, like, for example, mobile phone use and driving. So although switch costs may be relatively small, sometimes a few tenths of a second per switch, they can add up to large amounts when people switch repeatedly back and forth between tasks. Therefore, multitasking may seem efficient on the surface, but may take more time in the end and involve more error, especially with complex tasks. So throwing in a load of laundry while talking to a friend will probably be fine, but some of those things like, being on a meeting whilst you're posting on social media is one where you're not going to be performing well perhaps on either, and the classic mobile phone use while driving. The other thing is around asynchronous communication. So what are examples of asynchronous and synchronous communication? So synchronous communication is where I might walk to your desk and I tell you something and you consume the information at the same time I'm sending it to you, and you can respond in real time to what I'm saying. You can ask questions, learn new information, all on the fly. Asynchronous communication is where I write you an email, I send you the email, you read it, you have consumed the information after I've sent it, seemingly in your own time, and that frees up both parties from the need to be synced up together. So there's no immediate pressure to respond. So an even simpler explanation is synchronous is respond immediately and asynchronous is respond later. I guess the benefits of asynchronous communication is that it allows us to build up these large stretches of uninterrupted focus time. So the ability to communicate with a remote team and having members in multiple time zones, and it allows us really to reflect before we react as well. So adopting some more asynchronous communication, that is where you're giving people time to digest, it's not all instant, can often help with perfecting your answers and your responses because you've been given time to reflect, and also allows you to build up these stretches of uninterrupted focus time, especially when you can turn off notifications or put on a do not disturb. Which leads us into the next thing, which is avoiding distractions. So do not disturb mode, which is great. You may think about, in the book, they quite radically talk about getting rid of social media altogether. And you may or may not have seen The Social Dilemma, which is on Netflix at the moment. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's very, very interesting. And there's a lot of talk about, people giving up social media altogether. However, if you feel that, like for me, being an expat, things like Facebook, I find a connection back to home, and it helps me learn about how to actually be in this new sort of country and culture that I'm in. So I want to keep it, but I don't want to be addicted to it. So I've turn off all notifications so I can choose when I look at it and when I don't. So have that do not disturb mode, turn off notifications. The other thing is that I'm someone with a very active mind. So often when I am doing some deep work, different ideas will pop up into my mind. So the idea of having like a notebook or post-its, I've always got multiple things beside me to actually write down the idea or the thought, and then it allows me to keep going. So I can then get rid of that idea, get the monkey off my back, and then keep going with the deep work that I'm working on. The other thing is around taking energizing breaks. So this whole thing works on the principle that for every act of work that gains strength and energy from doing its opposite. So say, for example, you know, your writing gets better the more you read, your art gets better the more you study, you know, the masters and things like that. So your focus actually gets better the more time you take, or if you take time for play. And when you take the appropriate breaks. So once again, this company I mentioned before, Cave Day, so they've developed a matrix where they look at I guess the different types of work that you could be doing. So on the x-axis is the level of mental strain this work takes, and on the y-axis is how social your work is. So for example, right now I'm doing in the top right hand corner the highly social, high mental strain of facilitation. So after this, what I should do is basically do the opposite. So I should do something that is individual with low mental strain. That is, I should you know, go out to take my dog for a walk. I should do some meditation. I should maybe do some drawing, something that allows me to, I guess, rebalance the energy it's taken to facilitate and give energy out. I should restore that balance and take some energy back in. So really interesting concept around how we balance the work that we do, but with appropriate types of breaks, and what are the breaks that actually will increase and improve our performance. So this whole concept about downtime has been well researched. The whole idea of daydreaming is critical for innovation and creativity. It improves the way that we think. Often you might have noticed if you've hit a brick wall on your, or a roadblock in your work, and you've ended the day in frustration only to go to sleep, not think about it, and wake up the next day, and all of a sudden you go, oh, actually, now I know what to do next. This is the solution. So this is the power of pausing and actually allowing your mind to rest. Helps us to work through complex challenges with greater clarity. The other thing is downtime actually replenishes our ability to practice deep work. So we can restore that through these energizing breaks that I talked about as well. And actually our ability for deep work is actually finite. So some of the research shows that it's about 4 hours that we can do of deep work. So you're building up to that 4 hours. So you want to make sure that that is really well utilized and really well, I guess, implemented in terms of doing that deep work. So you've got to make sure that there's plenty of time for this downtime so that you can work to your maximum performance as well. And another thing you can think about too is actually a shutdown ritual for the end of the day. So it gives your mind a clear signal that work is over, particularly as, you know, now we are working from home. So that it becomes even more important, because previously we'd hop in a car or hop in public transport, and that would be the time to sort of switch between office and home. But now, not having that, it's actually more important that we have some sort of real shutdown ritual. And it could be as simple as just closing your laptop and saying out loud, I'm done for the day. Or something as simple as that. So it could be running through your to-do list or doing your block out time for the following day as well. So that is essentially deep work. If you want to know more, as I mentioned, Cal Newport's work his book, Deep Work, Rules for a Focused Success in a Distracted World, is excellent. Highly recommend reading that. And also check out Cave Day. They've got some great resources. That work break matrix is from them. And they also run some deep work sprints where you're doing it collaboratively with other people. And so you are actually sharing in the experience, which makes it much easier to complete and stay focused on your deep work as well. So thanks everybody for your participation. If you do have any questions, please let me know what your questions are in either the team chat, or you can turn yourself off mute.
Nicole, thank you for that. I put in a question in the chat box, and I'll invite everyone to drop in their questions as well. So I was asking what your thoughts are on an optimum duration of a deep work session.
I think so. A lot of the I guess things depend on you and how much time you can do. So I've also was reading some research from the University of Chicago where they were saying every hour you should take at least 5 minutes worth of breaks. So if we use that as a guide and we say, all right, we work deep work for an hour, then we do a break, and we do that 4 times, then maybe you get to that optimum 4-hour deep work sort of maximum, I suppose you could say. But it really depends. So when I've run this session before, we actually run a deep work sprint in the session, and we do it for 15 minutes. And people say, wow, I actually got a lot more done in that 15 minutes than I actually expected or thought that I would. So I would say it depends, and it depends on you and what you can afford in terms of time, and how well you can focus during that time as well. But I'd start out small, 15 to 20 minutes. I try and do sort of 1-hour sprints in terms of setting some deep work. Do Tim Tams help with deep working, and how is it only possible to eat one? This is an excellent question, Steve. Yes, they do help with deep work. Actually, I have to say the Tim Tam is my downtime. So at the end of the day, when everything's done, dinner, everything, and I'm sitting down with my family, that's when I have 1 cup of peppermint tea and a Tim Tam. And I'm very set on just one. That's the rule, because they're Australian. So somebody's asking, what is a Tim Tam? It's an Australian chocolate biscuit that is in abundance in Australia. And I've been living overseas for a few years, and so they're in Dubai now, and we're very excited. So we're only eating one per day. But they do help with the break component of deep work. How do you manage the impact all the meeting request video calls we're getting in this new working home world? Great question. I am a morning lark. I wake up at about 5:30 because my puppy dog wakes up at that time. I take her for a walk, and once I've got my child off to school, I have between 7 and 9 this wonderful period of time where no one disturbs me. It's heaven. So I have carved that time out as my deep work time if I can't get it in the day. There are times in the day where I also have a break between meetings, and I will go, oh my gosh, I will do something at that point. But I look for a time during my day which suits my sort of waking schedule, which is that 7 to 9 time. And often I find the deep work is quite invigorating. So sometimes it could be, you know, I'm reading something, I'm learning something, I'm writing something, I'm creating something. So I'm in this state of flow where it doesn't feel like it's cumbersome. And it's kind of pleasurable, so it's good. I don't feel like I've lost anything by doing that. So I would say find that time when you can carve out for yourself and you can have your own time. Am I finding video conferencing more or less efficient than conventional meetings pre-COVID? I'm going to say I find them different. It's harder to, I guess, connect with people because many people don't turn on their videos. So for me, for somebody who likes to, is very visual and I like to see, I find it really hard to read people. So it actually takes more brain work and brain capacity for us not to see. But some people find the opposite. So for some people, it takes them more brain capacity to see. And so it's once again finding out and having some self-awareness about what works for you. So for me, it is harder, but I find that you can do incredible things now that we couldn't do before. So I can now actually go on global webinars in these weird times as well, where it's not actual work. I can sign up for webinars in the UK, in the US, in Australia, and I can learn and be exposed to so many more things than if they were face to face. So I think it presents us with a lot more opportunities. It just requires a different set of skills and a different brain power than we were used to before. You find them 2 to 3 times more efficient. Excellent. Awesome. Yep. We can connect. They're faster. Don't have to do the commute. Very good. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, looks like that might be it for the questions today. So I'll hand over to Shahada and to close out the session.
Yeah, thank you for that, Nicole. That was a very, very interesting session. We just wanted to thank everyone for joining us and to leave you with this note. If you ever want to get in touch, please feel free to do so. You'll also be receiving the invite for the next sessions. Again, as I said, for you to mark your calendar, 5th of October in 2 weeks. We'll be back with some more interesting tips and hacks for you to have. Piotr, if you just want to say a few words as well, and then we can close.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you all for joining us again. We very much appreciate your support and looking forward to the next session in 2 weeks. And again, a big, big thank you to Nicole for giving this presentation. Found this very insightful and kind of, it explained a lot of processes in my head that I was kind of wondering about, but it helped to name them. So I think that was fantastic. So yeah, and I see that the feedback coming in the group chat now is good. So thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you again next time. Have a great evening, everyone.